We'll call this meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Ling,
Here.
Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here. Here.
Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mr. Lemak,
Here.
Mr. Olszewski, Mr. Diakopoulos,
Here.
Mayor Sinan.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't believe there are any unlisted amendments this evening, so that will bring us to our consent calendar items. Are there any questions or concerns from anyone about the consent calendar items this evening?
No, but Mr. Dice, it's not an unlisted amendment, but I know we talked to Michael before. If this meeting's going to take a long time, maybe moving the Public Works part of the workshop more to the first thing on the workshop if we can, just so.
Okay.
I know Bill has long days enough to.
Oh, absolutely. So
We're probably going to have a lot of discussion over.
looking at this, it would seem to me that the items for Bill are voting items. That being said, I think we can go out of order. So let's get through the first 8 things. Then
Yeah.
as soon as we get to the workshop,
Workshop,
we'll
we
get
can jump in.
Diana up there, handle it, and take it from there.
Yep.
So back to the consent calendar items. Any questions or concerns from anyone? Okay. Hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve consent calendar items A through C.
Thank you, Jamie and Jason. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. That brings us to comments by the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Dice. I don't know if Jim will get that up there on the screen, but I have another announcement first. Pretty important is that our Franklin Regional boys basketball team won the semifinal game the other evening, so they're going to be playing for the state championship Friday night at 8 p.m. at the Giant Center in Hershey. Just it's pretty interesting for the community, and we wish them the best of luck. Okay, the first announcement is parking lot work at Duff Park. Again, just a reminder, Public Works will begin working to improve the parking lot starting March 4th, an ongoing project with temporary closures of the parking lot. Please be advised that some days the parking lot will be closed to visitors. This project will be weather dependent and last through spring. If you wish to access Duff Park during the parking lot closure, you can park at the Roberts Trailhead, Murraysville Visitor Center, and there is a trail that connects to the Funk Bikeway. Roberts Trailhead Visitor Center is located at 4301 William Penn Highway, Murraysville. If you have any questions, call here at 327-2100, extension 311. Next, we have one more curbside leaf collection scheduled for Saturday, April 27th. To schedule a pickup on one of the collection dates below, please fill out the curbside leaf collection program form. There's a 20-bag limit each collection date. The deadline to sign up for each date is Thursday before the pickup date. Again, make sure you fill out the form, because if not, they might just drive by you. They might not even have any other pickups on that street. Also, the Murraysville Cleanup Week is April 15th through April 20th at the Pleasant Valley Landfill. The municipality of Murraysville's residents may take items to the Valley Landfill on PV Road from, again, April 15th to the 19th during the hours of 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. And on Saturday, they have hours of 7 to 11 a.m. That's on April 20th. Permit passes are necessary. You need to pick them up here at the front window so that you're able to take your items there. Lastly, now hiring, the municipality of Murraysville is seeking qualified applicants for the position of full-time code enforcement officer. Position is full-time with benefits. Go to murraysville.com and there's an online job application for that. That concludes my comments, Mr. Dice.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. And again, best of luck to the boys basketball team. That brings us to comments by the Chief Administrator. Jim?
No comments tonight, Mr. President.
Back in the saddle.
Yeah.
Good to see you, man. That brings us to community input. Can we see if anyone has signed up? Thank you. Okay, we'll just go in order. As always, it's 3 minutes to speak, but we go over, so if you hear me say thank you, that probably means you've been talking for 5 or 6 minutes. So with that being said, the first person who signed up is Deb Buchero.
Hi, I'm Deb Bachero, and I live at 4974 Klein Hollow Road. The reason I'm here is in the middle of February, I was walking in Duff Park and somebody broke into my car. I had to get a whole new door. It was $3,500 damage. It was a little bit my fault because my purse was on the passenger seat, but I've done that a gazillion times. That's never happened. So I guess I'm coming just asking if there'd be an opportunity to put security cameras in there. The police officer that came to my accident, or whatever you want to call it, incident, he said that would be a good idea. So I'm just coming before you guys as a possibility, thinking you're already there working. So if you could put in some security, or even a sign that says, sometimes a sign will do it.
Absolutely.
But I never expected that to happen. Brand new car, had the whole thing. But so that's all I wanted to say. And I feel safe in Murraysville. I still feel safe. I'll still go over there and walk. I haven't stopped walking. But if I was robbed, somebody else might be. And I know there's been robberies other places. So maybe we need to look at our community and see where we might need some security cameras. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's look into that. Yeah.
I was taking Pure Barre one morning, and the woman next door from the yoga place, the instructor, ran over and told us all to make sure that we brought our purses in because there had been smash and grabs that morning at the Blue Spruce
Yeah,
Plaza.
mine was broken into. My wife's purse was taken.
I think that's a good idea.
It's a problem in multiple communities in the parks right now, and our police are working with other departments to try to solve it.
Can I tell you one more thing? They did not take my credit cards, because now what they do is they take pictures of them. And all they took, made it look like they just took my cash. And if I wouldn't have closed off my cards, they were already trying to use my information. So they don't even take the cards now, they just take pictures of them. Just FYI.
Yeah, and that's not local, just local kids stealing. My wife's was, they had a girl with her hair dyed the same as my wife's within hours, wiping bank accounts out. So that's like a professional ring that's going around the communities. So
Wow.
it's not just something here, for sure. But
Hopefully we can get some cameras, and Mayor and the police are on it, so thank you, Ms. Bachero. That brings us to our next citizen's comment, which is Mr. Patrick Clevenger. And if you could just say your name and address for the record, thank you.
Yeah, Patrick Clevenger, 6970 Berkshire Drive, Mannerdale Farms. I'm here to just a couple concerns about the Kyler collision situation. I have 3 things I want to talk about. One is one of your ordinances, Chapter 220, 51, talking about setbacks for commercial businesses next to residential buildings or residential properties. It should be 40 feet, and the plans that I was able to get through the Right to Know show only 20 feet. Another one is I sent you an email this afternoon with a image showing their plan view over the property. There was a building or house at that point, at that position a few years ago, burned down. I just want to make sure that there's environmental concerns are taken care of for that property. And the last one is about the detention pond on the property. I found this EPA document about detention ponds. One is it does not account for any sort of chemical treatment of the water. It's only for stormwater retention. And the last one is the last paragraph in the document, which I want to bring to consideration, is that detention ponds can lower property values for the neighboring properties for residential areas. Thank you. If you need a copy of that, I can send you a copy of the document.
Please, to our emails. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clevenger, when I went to open up your email, I can't read that file format on my phone. Is
Okay,
there a way that you could save that in a different?
I can say the JPEG or something.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, sir. That brings us to Melanie Mills.
Melanie Mills, 6025 Forbes Hollow Road, Export. I apologize in advance, there's a lot of numbers in this. Council members, I would like to bring your attention to Articles 3, 4, and 5 of the Murraysville Code on Land Development. I sent council a much more detailed assessment of these articles in an email earlier today, and I encourage you to read through this code thoroughly over the next few days. Article 5, Section 20147 states, "The application for preliminary approval of a land development shall be submitted in accordance with this chapter and shall include the following." The code goes on to outline at least 49 permits, documents, proposals, plans, statements, etc., that are all required to be included with the development application prior to the vote by council. Article 20148 of the code states that the commission shall accept or reject the application based on the requirements of section 20147 as complete in content and properly filed. Therefore, each of the required permits and documents outlined in Article 5 must be received and approved by council prior to the vote on April 5th. I would next like to call your attention to section 20147 Q21, which requires the developer to provide the location, type, and approximate size of existing utilities to serve the development and written verification from each utility that will service it. Has council received written verification from FTMSA that would grant the developer access to connecting to the existing sewer? Since the municipality owns the adjacent green space and on the GIS tax map is listed as described as public park, the municipality must grant an easement to the developer to access this sewer line and tie-in. Therefore, Murraysville Council has the authority to prevent the development by simply denying the necessary easement across this municipal-owned property. Section 20147G states that an environmental impact statement shall be prepared and submitted with the application. This environmental impact statement shall describe, identify, and analyze all environmental aspects of the site and neighboring properties that may be affected. Has the Planning Commission reviewed this environmental impact statement? The environmental impact statement shall include, but not limited to, all critical impact areas, but are not limited to, and I'm going to jump down here, stream corridors, streams, wetlands, and wildlife habitat. It has been brought to my attention by residents in Manordale Farms that there are potentially 2 locations of hibernating bats on the proposed development. The northern long-eared bat is a federally threatened and critically endangered species and protected by federal law. It is unlawful to disturb trees acting as their hibernaculum. It is currently bat hibernating season. Has the developer asked the PA Game Commission to visit the site to assess for critically endangered species? I believe this should be part of the environmental impact plan. Is that included in the statement? Section 20147Q14 states that the certification by a registered professional geotechnical engineer regarding the feasibility of any proposed grading of slopes, etc., measures to mitigate landslides, soil erosion, sedimentation, storm runoff, and potential impacts to adjacent properties. Has council received this certification by a registered professional geotechnical engineer regarding impacts to my property for soil erosion, sedimentation, and runoff? In Article 5, Section 198-401, the general requirements of stormwater management state that no development plan, subdivision, or land development plan shall be approved, no permit authorizing construction or development issued, nor any earth disturbance activity subject to this chapter initiated or undertaken unless a stormwater management plan for such activity is reviewed and approved in accordance with the provisions of this chapter. The provisions of this chapter are immense, as you can see. I encourage you to thoroughly read through Article 5. Has the municipality received a stormwater management plan that correctly adheres to each of these obligations by the developer? Has the Westmoreland Conservation District granted the NPDES permit, a compliant erosion sediment control plan, and DEP Chapter 102 erosion and sediment control plan? If approved, this development could cause real harm to adjacent properties, both in diminishing property values of the 3 homes facing the development, or rear facing, however you see it, and to my adjacent property downstream to the east, which will receive all stormwater runoff. As elected members of the council and representative of the residents of Murraysville, I ask you to do your due diligence in adhering to the documented land development application process and all applicable codes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll certainly be sure to look into this, Wes. There's a lot of code cited here, but we'll definitely look into it. That brings us to our next resident, Mr. Joe Curray.
Yes. Joe Correa, 6995 Berkshire Drive. At our last meeting, the Vice President of Caliber stood in front of all of you, and he said that New Kensington was a mistake, that none of their places are like that, and that at every location, every car had some sort of a mat underneath it to prevent leakage, and they would collect all the leakage. Well, he lied. I went to 5 different locations. Not one car, let alone half of the cars, not one car had any mat or any protection underneath the car. All of the leaking fluids, and there were cars torn apart, were going right into the ground, which eventually would wash into the soil and maybe get into our drinking supply. So I'm saying if this is approved, that they need to be fined $10,000 for every violation that they have. And the second violation would be doubled and doubled after that. And secondly, we want the zoning to go back to one property and not separated. The zoning board heard us. They listened. They said that they approved the separation at your approval, Jim Morrison, because you coached them on what to do 3 times and got up and intervened. And I think he needs to be replaced by a permanent member of the zoning board who knows zoning laws and will re-sign all the zoning laws in Murraysville, to bring them up to date, because they are not currently up to date. You were not.
Sir, none of that statement is correct.
What?
None of that statement is correct. I had nothing to do with the zoning of that property.
You got up and you intervened with her 3 times. Conflict of interest.
All right, sir, let this.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
That's my
understand.
feeling, okay?
I understand, yes.
We want a double row of thuga bushes, at least 10 foot tall, surrounding the entire perimeter of the property, so that when they grow, hopefully 5 feet a year, after 2 or 3 years, we won't be able to see this ugly operation. Want them staggered around the entire perimeter. And the fence must be not a chain link on one side, one fence, all the same composition all the way around, fireproof, because some of these electric cars, if the lithium batteries catch on fire, you can't put it out with water. And is our fire department able to handle something like that? Does our fire department have the capability to put out a fire? Because that could catch the whole place on fire and eventually catch all of our homes on fire as well. If a HOP is given, a decorative retaining wall should be put up as high as where the present soil comes right now, with an additional 6 feet barrier on top of that as a sound barrier. I can hear every single car and truck in my backyard, the back of my house, and in the front of my house, I can hear every car on Route 22 in both directions. So we need some sort of a barrier if that's approved. Approved by the resident. Erosion and sediment controls from the proposed HOP entrance will have to show control from the digging and excavation of the land, because all that erosion will eventually wind up down in Melanie's yard. Safe removal of the buried house and horse manure. We want to bring OSHA in to supervise the operation. I think they would probably be the best ones to supervise, to make sure if there's any contamination that it's stopped. And we want a double oil filter. They said they have a single oil filter now, a water separator filter. We want a double oil filter, 50 feet from each other. It'll catch more of the sediment that they're obviously going to put into the pipeline. Now, these people don't care about the residents of Mannerdale. When they leave, they're gone. We get stuck with all their problems and all their junk. If there's any fatal accident where this HOP is proposed for the entrance, and it's very dangerous, somebody's going to get killed, you can believe that all the residents will be in the affirmative with the plaintiffs against Caliber and Murraysville. We'd all be there. It should not be built. I sent you some information on the Max landfill in Yukon dumping asbestos into the landfill, and they're trying to fight it and they can't do it. If we approve something like this and they start dumping, how are we going to know and how are we going to stop it? So don't approve this. Let them move across the street. There's 3 acres directly across the street. Beautiful level ground. Move the operation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that brings us to Troy and Cynthia Smith.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Smith. This is my husband, Troy. We live on 6999 Berkshire Drive. I just have a couple points I want to make from online. I found this with Insight. It's a 10-year community vision. It was printed in 2015, and it goes through 2025. Okay, the goals of a comprehensive plan outlined on page 5. The goals of this plan are to identify what the community wants to achieve in the coming decade. 2 of the main goals of this plan are: 1, to balance development with conservation to maintain the ambience and quality of Murraysville neighborhoods, and 2, to carefully manage the community's growth and promote responsible development by aligning appropriate development opportunities with realistic infrastructure and services. Council members, I ask you to think about the goals of this plan. By voting in favor of this development, maintaining the ambience and quality of a major Murraysville neighborhood, and in this case is Manordale Farms. By voting in favor of this development, you are being responsible for aligning appropriate development opportunities with realistic infrastructure and services. Another thing is some of the objectives of the comprehensive plan. I have 3 points to that. 1, to encourage infill and adaptive reuse development to best utilize existing building stock and complement appropriate and existing neighborhood land uses. Another is to encourage retention of long-term residents and attract a new generation of long-term residents. And 3 is to ensure that quality development complements established community character and is environmentally responsible through land use controls. This development does not encourage infill development or adaptive reuse development, nor does it complement the existing residential neighborhood of Manordale Farms. This development does not encourage retention of long-term residents. Would you want this in your backyard? This development does not ensure that quality development complements established community characters. This is not quality development. Have you researched this development company? By voting in favor of this development, you are going against the objectives laid out in this comprehensive plan, and by voting in favor of this development, you are voting against Murraysville's desires for its community, and I encourage you to please vote no and stand with the desires of this community to place an auto body shop where they belong, not in our residents' backyards. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Troy Smith, 6999 Berkshire Drive, as my wife was speaking. All great points. You know, we've been here 4 months, 5 months, I don't know what it's been. And it's very frustrating for us. I think you all listen to us, but do you really hear us? That's my concern. We talked about bullet points. If, in the fact, these people are able to build behind us, we talked about an 8-foot-high privacy fence. If that's the case, we would like it not only protecting in front of our house, but down around the corner so our neighbors are not affected with it also. Joe mentioned the giant trees. I talked to one of the people who are bidding the job as far as moving dirt, and they're willing to put more dirt behind our house so it raises it up so the trees would even be higher, which I think would be a great thing. The higher, the better, so we don't have to take a look at this place every single day. Joe also mentioned retaining walls. Behind my property, where their entrance is, they're going to be cutting back. Now, is there a process where they're going to put a retaining wall there so the land does not subside? They're going to take away all the trees, which are acts as a sound deafener. I'm going to sit in my backyard and hear even more noise. There's already a noise back there from Route 22. It's going to be even escalated more if something is not done back. Just to reiterate some of the things that we talked about earlier in the meetings, no light shining towards our homes, shrubs between the fence as well as the big trees, maybe as another sound buffer, I don't know. We're concerned about people turning into Manordale Farms, going into this establishment and making the U-turn in our yard. I don't want that. You know, these are bigger trucks. You know, I've been in the car business for almost 40 years now. I know what consists of a car body shop. Believe me, I know. I run a dealership. So a lot of the things that the gentleman last week was saying are not true. I'm not going to get into them right now, but, you know, we want to be protected from this place, especially if people come into our neighborhood. I don't want that. We talked about hours of operation. I'm hoping I'm correct in this. I think last time we talked about no weekend hours and closing at, I think, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which would also be a help, you know, as far as people being back there.
Can I say about coming
In the back part?
Yeah, in the back.
Go ahead.
What he was talking about, the trucks coming in and making a U-turn into where we live, if they don't do that, they're going to go around and come in the back end of Manordale Farms. We have a ton of kids that play in the streets. That is definitely not safe. So I just wanted to bring that up to your attention as well. There is going to have to be some sort of something. PennDOT's going to have to do something to get this traffic without killing somebody. We wanted to say that as well.
So when you do vote, every one of you put yourselves in our position. And I guarantee you'll think differently. Whether it's right or wrong, you know, I get they have a right to build their business. We also have rights as our, you know, being in the back of our neighborhood. You know, we don't need this where we're at. There's plenty of space up and down Route 22 to develop where no one would bother them. You know, to have an angry neighborhood of 200 plus is not a good business. So, you know, think about when you make your decision, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that brings us to Russ Sebko.
Russ Sepko, 2414 Willow Drive in Manordale Farms. I sent Jason a set of conditions to be considered. I think that was part of the discussion topic for this evening. Certainly it wasn't meant to be an all-inclusive set of conditions, and certainly other conditions have been mentioned by other residents here tonight. And you may get additional conditions also. So didn't want you to think that that was it from the neighborhood. And I think what you're hearing is even if all those conditions were satisfied, I think the primary preference for the neighborhood would still be for this not to be built, even if those conditions were satisfied. So didn't want to leave the wrong impression on that either. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that brings us to Aaliyah Pastorino.
Sorry, I have to move that down. I'm the short one in the room. So,
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dr. Aaliyah Pastorino. I reside at 6970 Berkshire Drive. I will not go through all of my documents. My neighbors were kind enough to fill you in on a great deal of this, but I think that I understand the position Council is in probably more intimately than you realize, because I sat for 8 years as an elected official in another municipality before moving to Murraysville to provide my son a stellar education. We chose Manordale Farms because it is a community, and it is a safe community. And as our neighbors have had conversations, as we have reviewed countless videos of recordings of the minutes and the proceedings, I think there's a collective consensus that several things need to happen. I think the first is a recommendation. Council needs to really look through the ordinances now that you're seeing an intersection of residential and building business entities coming and commingling in a space together, because we're running out of space in Murraysville. And I think that's necessary because it abates some of the concerns that have come before all of you. So that's the first point. As someone who has the pleasure of having the back end of my property abut 22, my concerns are specifically, in addition to those of all of my neighbors, related to noise. I think that it is necessary for there to be a traffic study conducted to determine the noise, because that is going to be compounded from the noise that is generated from the business. One of the things in our ordinances, particularly in Ordinance 157, subsection 4, is there are ANSI standards. I guess to say it safely, they probably require a doctorate to understand them, so I did what a researcher at a university does, and I went out into peer-reviewed literature to understand how they're interpreted. And basically, the long story short of it is that most collision centers operate at a minimal decibel level of 85 decibels. If you are to review our ordinances, particularly the noise level limit, you will observe that in the mixed use and business district during the day, during business operational hours, the maximum load is 65 decibels. So we're already talking a decibel load well in excess of those of our municipal standards, firstly. And secondly, even though they may be within the building, unless there's deadening or soundproofing to ensure it doesn't leach out, all of my neighbors whose properties abut the development will be forced to not only listen to 22, but also subsequently the business. I won't even go into the impact of that on the well-being and health of the employees, but there is significant indices to suggest there's a problem there. The other thing is that based upon our ordinances, that under special provisions, any equipment that comes in, because they have not previously operated here before 2001, all of that equipment must comply with intrusive noise level limits. So I think that is something to be considered. I think the other thing is it is imperative for there to be conversations to think of ways to proactively address this. We are a residential community without sidewalks. We already have a high volume of dogs walking, children playing, cars commingling through the neighborhood. So added traffic volume, particularly coming off of Harrison City Road, will migrate through Manordale Farms. And we would hate to see that there are accidents as a consequence of that. That is something. The other thing that I have concerns related to are fire suppression systems, because unfortunately, when vehicles are compromised as the result of an accident, it is an inevitable reality that they can catch fire. So I would like to see there be very significant consideration and revision of their plan to address that, because unfortunately, the materials in those sorts of spaces require hazmat intervention, and I don't know if our fire department has the current capacity to support that. So those are a few of my thoughts. I thank you very much for your time, and I do hope that there is opportunity for further conversations to be had before the vote is finalized in April. Thank you.
I'll note that was the last individual who had signed up to comment, but I saw some people walk in after we got started. For the good of the order, would anyone else like to speak? If so, please just, yes, sir, please just walk up. And just say your name and address, please. Yeah, we do, but.
Ken Berenger, 2411 Willow Drive, Manordale Farms. I had prepared additional material. My neighbors have been so over the top, I don't need to cover any of it. But I did hear a lot of emotion. I'm sorry we're as upset as we are. You folks bear the brunt of that. For many people, their homes it's everything. And I do real estate, and it's still bugging me because I live there, But you heard a lot of I want. And we know that there are rights on each side. Instead of hearing I want, why don't you hear I deserve? A clean and safe neighborhood. I deserve to not have the home I bought fundamentally changed without any real input when clearly, as Melanie pointed out, there's a ton of stuff to go through here. The position that I think council found itself in is unable to vote no for fear of it escalating and you guys being in the wrong and it ending up being a big mess and going up anyway, and then it's a no-win situation. I think given the overwhelming amount of information that you've been providing, I read through it today and my head started to hurt, so I sympathize. I truly believe that council can, I hope, vote no and be on the right side of it. Not do it to be, just to say, well, I'm going to listen to the residents. I'm not going to listen to. No one wants to be unfair. We don't want to be unfair to them. We hope they don't want to be unfair to us. So I would, instead of saying I want, I'm going to say please. Okay, please hear these people. And replace that I want with I deserve. And I think it changes your calculus a little bit, right? This is all, a lot of folks, this is all we got. So I'm hoping that, you rather than, saber rattling, that we simply ask you to defend and protect the rights of the residences. I don't want to get, parochial, but we were here first type thing, okay? Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, before we move on, would anyone else like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed with our agenda. And thank you, everyone. We're going to have a robust discussion tonight about the center and the conditions, and I wrote down as much as I could. We'll try to get to all that. So we will now move on to liaison comments and committee reports. Eli, you said you're ready to go, so you want to start?
Yeah, I'll give an update on the pension fund. I did not attend the meeting for February, but Larry Schultz did provide a summary for me. So a few highlights. The invested assets really delivered a strong February of gains that offset some small losses in January. So for a year-to-date growth of 2.3% on the pension fund. So that's tremendous growth year-to-date. And then for March, it's already up 1% month to date with a little halfway through the month. The next meeting will be on April 11th, and we'll be attending that meeting for the first time. So good news.
Yeah,
Thanks.
awesome. Thank you. Yep. Jamie?
Sure. I was unable to attend the last Planning Commission meeting. Jason very kindly volunteered to sub for me, so he has my report, well, his report. And the next meeting is April 9th.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Matt?
Parks and Recreation, actually, the meeting got changed, so we met tonight at 6 o'clock, so I just got out of there. A couple of things going on. Obviously, the Easter egg hunt for the kids is going on. Just make sure that you're registered for that prior to. The Kelman Weird had a couple people from the Boy Scouts that attended the meeting tonight. There's going to be some work done at the Kelman Reserve, which is kind of comes from North Hills Road down to Evergreen. There's an entrance at Evergreen. It's pretty overgrown. So a lot of that has become overgrown. So we're going to work with the Boy Scouts, and we're going to clear those trails and add the signs to it so that people can start to utilize those. The other thing is we're gonna really hone in on sponsorships within the parks. We're looking at different amenities that can be added. It could be anything from a $1,000 project up to a $50,000 project, depending on what people's interests are to be a sponsor for those types of things. And the things we're talking about are like possibly the concrete tables or checkered and chess tables. Possibly, we've looked at the concrete like soccer balls and baseballs and stuff for some of the parks where teams can take their pictures and whatnot. So those type of things, we're going to come up with a list of what they are. We've had people sponsor benches for family members that have passed and whatnot. So all things like that. There was a big list from years ago So we're going through that list and going to kind of update what level of sponsorship those would be, and look at possibly doing that just to add some amenities to the park, but not have to spend municipality money on it. So, and lastly, Jim pulled up, just wanted to show everyone. So this is something that Parks and Recreation and the Parks Foundation, and for those that don't know, Parks and Recreation Committee kind of is built of some of the staff members within the municipality, as well as volunteers that help with all the different projects and different events that go on for Parks and Recreation. The foundation was created to fund the projects that are needed in those parks. So you're going to be seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more of that. There's going to be a lot of fundraising going on. Knows who the volunteers that are there from that are. So we're going to have this, we're going to have literature, we're going to have information on how, if you want to help out, even if it's just at one event a year, we'll take it, because it's very hard to get volunteers anymore. So we could take anything that we could give. So this is brand new, just came in this week. So we're excited. It has the Parks and Recreation for the municipality, as well as the foundation logos on it, and hopefully everyone will see it and notice it at all the events in Murraysville. So that's it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yep.
I love the grants part too, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Toro?
Yes, it's a good-looking tent. The Medic One meets this coming Thursday, and the Parks and Recreation Foundation meets on April 8th, and I'll let you know what comes from that next meeting.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Jason?
Okay, so my normal library meeting is Thursday, but I did sub in for Jamie at the last Planning Commission meeting. There was a public hearing in regards to the Castiglione development, which is Westertown and Hilty Road, 56.6 acres, 24 lots, 1.5 acre lots. The public hearing was for major excavation and steep slope. So that occurred, along with a presentation on the general business overlay, taking a look at the current zoning and look to make possibly some future changes.
Okay, definitely. All right.
That's all.
All right, awesome, thank you, and thanks again for filling in. It's just great that people are able to do that for each other, so
No problem.
that's awesome. I just note that FDMSA meets on Thursday at 6 p.m. at the FDMSA plant. So with that being said, we're going to go ever so slightly out of order just to get some people out of here, since we're sure we're going to be talking about Caliber Collision for quite some time. So let's start, I think I saw JC, if you or Bill, whoever can get here fastest. Yeah. Let's go.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I hope you're all doing well tonight. So I'm here to go over the annual insurance policy that we renew. It is required that Council must approve all contracts, including those covering property, casualty, auto, liability, and professional coverages. This year's premium is broken up into 4 sections that I'm going to cover briefly. The first one is for the commercial property, automobile, and general liability. The policy renewal rate is $99,236, which is 4.2% increase from last year, or about $4,040. This 4.2 cost increase can be attributed to the commercial property values reported in the most recent actuarial study. They said that our commercial property has increased about 12%, or $2.75 million. And this cost increase is primarily due to the cost of construction materials and labor. A 2023 dividend is expected from MRM that will help offset this cost by $2,270. The second portion of the insurance renewal is the public officials liability, which is $25,715. This is about a 2.4% increase, or a $609 increase. The police professional liability rate actually experienced a decrease of 1.94%, or $486. And this is due to the accreditation that the police officers hold. The total change in premium rates increased 2.84%. Increase is lower than what the market is experiencing right now. Currently, people are seeing anywhere on the upside of 20% for insurances, but we are very fortunate to be a part of the MRM program, which helped keep these costs relatively flat compared to last year or even the year before. That's pretty much the overview. Does anybody have?
J.C., did you say $99,000 for the commercial property, automobile, et cetera, and $25,000 for the Greenwich insurance? Those two numbers don't add up to $153,686.
There is $99,236 for property, liability, auto, $25,715 for the public official liability.
Right.
Police professional totaled $24,514, and then the excess public officials is $8,586. So the total cost is $158.51, which versus last year was $153,686.
What was that total number again?
158,051.
I think we might.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah, the number on here is 153,686, so we just, when we vote, we have to update that.
No one made a motion yet, so we'll be okay. So
Yeah, the 153,686 was last year's number.
Okay.
Okay.
So any
We'll
other?
make sure we get it right.
Any other questions? I mean, MRM's been doing a great job for us, so it's pretty simple. Okay, can somebody make a motion with the correct number of, I believe, 158,051?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the insurance offered, resulting in a total of $158,051.
And that's to renew with MRM?
Yes, it is, and Greenwich.
Yep, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carl and Jamie. Any closing questions or concerns? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, JC.
Thank you, and thank you, Carl, for noticing that discrepancy.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
All right, have a good night, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good evening, Council.
Yeah.
I'm here tonight to ask for your authorization to advertise for material bids. These are our yearly material bids that we go out for consumables used at the Public Works Department.
Okay. So we're on 16A right now. We'll make a motion in a second. Any questions or concerns regarding the material bids? Okay, can I have a motion for 16A then?
Make a motion to advertise for bids, various road materials, signs, and line painting for the period of June 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025.
Second the motion.
Let's go Mac and Jamie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 16A is unanimous. Thanks, everybody. And then, Bill, you just want to give us a heads up on 16B, the awards for bids?
Yes. I came to you last month and said we were putting some vehicles out for surplus sales. We went through the process of municipal bid, and what came back was the Ventrac tractor we sold for $20,776. The Batwing mower that sits behind our John Deere tractor, we sold for $5,194. And the old brine sprayer that we had on the back of one of the trucks, it sold for $345. I'm very happy with the results of what came back.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, every little bit helps. That's great.
Sure.
Yeah, we've done well on that municipal bid.
Yeah.
We've almost netted $600,000 since we started this in 2010.
That's amazing. Wow.
By the time we sell the big trucks here this spring, they're starting to come in. They're being replaced. We'll probably go another 75 to 100,000.
Wow, That's great. Thanks for your hard work on that. Any questions or concerns about these sales?
No.
Okay, can I have a motion for 16B then?
Motion to award bids for the sale of used surplus municipal equipment.
As contained in the briefing.
Yes.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Jamie and Jason. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much for moving the staff up to in front of these folks here. We appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for letting us know. And thanks for saying that, Mac. I wouldn't have thought
Yeah,
that.
no worries.
You're more considerate than me. So with that being said, we will now get, I believe, to our main workshop item, which will be a discussion regarding the Caliber collision site. Jim, Bill, how would we like to begin tonight?
I guess I can begin, Mr. President. At the last meeting, council had requested this meeting be set up to discuss the proposed conditions. In your Dropbox posted today were the proposed conditions. I waited till today because of council input over the last 2 weeks. So those are provided in the Dropbox. There's 26 conditions there based on the discussions that we've had with Caliber through the Planning Commission and council review process. I think first I would like just to make mention of how application processes work here to re-familiarize council with the process. There is an application process. That application is completed by a proposed developer. As part of that application process, the provisions of Chapter 201, the Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, Chapter 220, the Zoning Ordinance, and I believe it's Chapter 93 of the Stormwater Management Ordinance, are required to be met. In order for us to accept an application, those studies that are required as part of those ordinances must be completed and presented for review. Once we receive the application and deem it to be relatively complete, that is then forwarded to the reviewing agency that reviews the studies and generates the briefings that you see. Staff provides the input for those briefings. At that point, the applicant is then prepared to go to the Planning Commission for a review of the information provided, sometimes 1 meeting, sometimes 3 meetings, sometimes more, at which time Planning Commission reviews and the applicant makes application. Planning Commission's responsibility is to make recommendation to council. In this case, I believe that occurred sometime after the first of the year. We bring forth to council the recommendations of the Planning Commission. Council then has the opportunity to review those conditions, review the recommendation by the Planning Commission, and then add conditions if so desired. I think the point to remember is that there are different types of land use applications. There's land use applications for use by right. There's applications for use by conditional use, which requires a whole different additional process of public hearings and such. This is an application for a permitted use in a B district. And outlined in the zoning ordinance are the provisions that an applicant must meet in order for it to be recommended by the Planning Commission and considered for approval by council. Additional conditions, if applied by either the Planning Commission or council, anything outside that's specified in either the zoning ordinance or the land development ordinance or the stormwater management ordinance have to be mutually agreed to. And in this case, there have been commitments by the developer to this point to certain conditions that were applied by council or applied by Planning Commission, in addition to comments that councils had through the review process. I want you to bear in mind that those conditions are negotiated and don't have to be agreed to by the applicant. Only the conditions, or only the provisions that are required in the ordinances that I had identified. So if council would deny and those conditions may be withdrawn, if council would approve and contest it through legal action, could be withdrawn as long as the applicant can meet the requirements of the ordinance as a permitted use. So with all that said, there are proposed conditions of approval, as I said, are in your Dropbox, and there's 20 of them, or 26 of them, that have come up as a result of the review by the Planning Commission staff and council to date. And they're available for you to review and for me to respond to if you have any questions.
Okay. So I guess at this point, we did ask staff to come up with some conditions. They've done, as we asked them, they came up with 26 conditions that they gave us. So this is the chance for us to ask staff about these conditions, what we think, what we like, what we don't like, what we think needs to be bigger and badder. But I think the thing that really we have to remember as a council is, again, this is a permitted use. So we are asking the applicant to agree to these conditions. And they said, look, we are looking to agree to some conditions at the last meeting. So I just think we need to understand that this is somewhat of a negotiation and not a imposition. So with that being said, and I say that simply as a legal reality, they have to agree to it. As Jim said, it's a permitted use. So with that, me and Jim kind of giving the preamble there. Council, questions, concerns, thoughts?
Are we going right to the proposed conditions, or what are we discussing?
Whatever you want. So if we want to do conditions, if we want to talk about the project and ask questions, this is a workshop. This is under workshop items, so this is kind of a council, speak now or forever hold your peace. We're talking about everything.
So before we get into that, note with all due respect, Dana, I understand your background and yours as well, Jim. Mr. Long, would you agree with all the legal aspects of what was stated?
Mr. Lee Mack, yes, I agree with what Mr. Morrison stated, and I agree with what Chairman Dice stated as well.
Thank you, Wes.
So I have a question. With what Melanie brought up, I'm not an attorney, I have not had time to review all the code. Is what she said accurate? If they do not meet all of the conditions, can we vote no?
They have to meet the conditions.
Well, if they don't, then it's a no vote?
I would say yes. If they come in and say, because this is actually something we do need to get to, I believe it was Melanie who said there's a discrepancy with the setbacks. Yeah, if a developer comes in and says, well, your ordinance requires, X amount of setbacks, and we're just not going to do that. We refuse, then yeah, you deny it, but I don't know if I've ever seen that happen. They want to build here, they're going to do what they have to in addition to the things that we're asking them to do as conditions. So yeah, that's somewhat of a good question, or no, it is a good question. Jim, we haven't given them any leeway. It leads to a good question. Sorry. We haven't, because...
Other than typically, council will condition approval on development applications for items that are where time is required for them to be received. For example, an MPDS permit, or the approvals of the water authority or the sewer authority. Once planning modules and designs are submitted and approved. But those are conditions of approval. So if, in fact, they do not meet those conditions, then permits are not issued and work cannot begin.
Absolutely. So I think that that's important to note. And I think another thing that I really want to note is, forget the building, but there was a building in my time on council that was on Route 22 that we gave them a slight reduction in the glazing requirements. And we did that as a council, and the applicant explained why, and we said, well, that makes sense. We're not doing that here, right, Jim?
No, but the only time council can grant waivers is if, in fact, they are identified in the zoning ordinance in the case of only parking, and in the subdivision ordinance, council can grant waivers. But those waivers must be requested by the applicant and must be approved by council.
And we have not done that here, correct?
No.
Yeah, we're doing this by the book, above and beyond the book, actually, with the acquiescence of the applicant. Again, I've been talking a lot, so council, please. So I guess...
I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Okay, no, go on, sorry. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So I guess the reason I ask this, because I can't say that I've ever scoured through that part of the code before, because frequently we get applications where a lot of them are they're met on the condition that the applicant completes that, correct? But if it is in the code that it must be completed before we approve, then we should be, I mean, like I said, I haven't read it all myself, so I don't know the accuracy. I'm asking a question. If that is indeed the code and we're not following that.
Well, we are. That's what I just asked Jim.
But I guess my question is, are we allowed to conditionally give approval? Is that part of the code?
This isn't a conditional use. So to answer your question, what I think we're getting at is we can't, I actually litigated a case like this at Commonwealth Court. You can't say, well, we're not going to approve it till you get your NPDES permit, because the Conservation District is going to say, well, we don't want to see your application until the local municipality approves it. So that's where you do get to put these conditions that say you will get an NPDES permit. And if for whatever reason the applicant just can't, the Conservation District, there's some issue, they never get an NPDES permit, then that's it, they can't build. And that is just kind of the way it works. As Jim said, some things you can say, applicant, you will do this right now. You will get this study right now.
Okay.
You will start doing this right now. Other things, like how can we say you can't start building until, the trees are 10 foot tall? Plant the tree when it's 4 foot tall, and you plant a tree that will grow to 10 foot tall. Things like that. So to put it simply, and again, I want to reiterate this, we're not walking away from our ordinances at all. There is not one thing we're saying, oh, let's look the other way on that. This applicant and all applicants, unless we affirmatively say different, will meet every single thing in our code. And I just want to put this out there. I know a lot of developers, and they say Murraysville's tough to develop in. They don't like it. They want to build in the plum boroughs and places like that where it's a little bit easier. So, yeah, please continue, yeah.
Well, then I'm just going to move on to the proposed conditions of approval, number 10. It says hours of operation will be limited to 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday. I know somebody, the Smiths, I think, made a comment that they believed that there would be no weekend hours and closing at 5 p.m., I think is what they stated. So I just want to make sure that the conditions that are proposed are in line with what they believe.
Absolutely, and I also just want to make sure too, we're talking the applicants there, we have to make sure that for all of these conditions, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, these are the conditions that we're hoping the applicant will agree to, right?
That's correct.
As from our last meeting where they said they would look at some conditions like that. So I think we absolutely should demand that they do what the residents want while recognizing, again, this is negotiation, they don't have to. Yeah, Wes?
Do you want to invite Mr. Sittig?
Yeah, I think at this point, probably
think.
we should have Mr. Sittig. Thanks.
And let's go through these conditions so, we don't have to revisit this again in April.
No, I think that's the way to go. Thanks, Wes. So again, Mr. Sittig, you've been given a copy of the conditions that Mr. Morrison came up with, and I think what Wes is saying, I think it's a good idea. Let's just go through 1 through 26 and talk about them.
Sure.
So with that being said,
I might want to start
Oh, sure.
I don't know if council got it, but this is condition. We heard one of the neighbors in particular, and they're referenced. Sounds very much like making a record to me. Been doing this a long time. So I just want to note to everybody the couple of conditions of these actually happening. Obviously, the approval, right?
Absolutely.
We don't have to appeal it. There aren't going to be any conditions we don't accept, we don't think. So you're adding on something we don't accept, or if there's an appeal.
Okay, and
so those are just the ground rules. So
I think that's very important, and thank you for saying that, because this is something I want to make sure everybody understands, because I've been in this situation before on council where people will say, Dane, just vote no because we don't want this. And what I say to them is, I could do that, and it would delay this project. But this is private property, and if I vote no, all those conditions go away. So hypothetically, we could go through 1 through 26 tonight, and the applicant can say, fine, we agree to all those. If we as a council then go, you know what, we're just going to vote no anyway, and we hope the applicant goes away, all 26 of these are gone. That's it. So all these things about hours of operation, this extra fence that we're going to ask them to put in, exterior building lighting, it's gone. So the one thing I want everyone to keep in mind, I think it's been said, and I really take it to heart, which is, Dane, if this was in your backyard, how would you feel? And the thing I think is, yeah, I wish it wasn't there, but I don't own it, so there's nothing I can do. But I want these conditions. I want to minimize the impact that this has on residents to the best degree this council can. And if we vote no and all these conditions go away, which the attorney for the applicant just said they will, which is their legal right, that's problematic. So with Mr. Sittig laying the groundwork there, is there anything else we need to talk about before we get into the conditions? Okay. So the first condition I have is the building will be constructed according to the specifications and materials identified in the updated plans as approved at the April 3rd, 2024 regular meeting of council. That's perfunctory, right?
Well, that, just to mention, this quality of the building is, there's not any minimum quality. We were told, like Conley's, in this situation, what I suspect is there was a negotiation to get materials that were not otherwise required. There's Drive It. This is a much higher building than Conley's, and we don't have to do it. Again, we know people don't want any building, but this is a much better, higher quality, sustainable, attractive building that has to be built. And it's going to at much greater expense.
Much greater expense, to put it simply, it looks better. Some of these conditions I think will help to lessen the impact on the residents, but I think that's, again, a very important point, Mr. Sittig. If this applicant decided, you know what, we're tired of talking to you, Murraysville Council, they could make this building look a lot worse and still comply with our ordinances. So we just have to recognize that as we move forward. So is there any other ideas about number one, Mr. Sittig?
No, we're committed. We're going to, regardless of what the price comes in, we're committed. We're going to build it with those standards.
Absolutely. So number two, and again, council, jump in. I'm just going to read it so everybody knows what we're looking at. A solid 8-foot tall fence will be constructed and maintained on the west side of the property. Council thoughts, Mr. Sittig?
I had a question on that. So there was talk of excavation of the property to build up a mound of some sort, which the trees would be planted on top of that, which would raise up and allow for less view of any of that. Where does the fence come in? That's not on the property line, is that right?
That's correct. It was, first of all, it's solid, it's 8 feet, all above code, and it's also, the elevation was tried to be built up to provide the most screening, and then there's landscape screening, which is well above code requirement. So that has all been per all these recommendations. The other thing we heard tonight is that there's some work that can be done maybe on the neighboring properties, the 3 folks that are immediately abutting to the west. We're going to talk to those folks if and when we do that. We don't have any property rights here. We're not here conditioning it to get their consent. We're going to talk to those folks and try to improve that condition, but it can't be a condition here. We don't have those property rights.
Just on what Max said there, it's going to be built not on the property line? It'll be some distance
Fence is in, yes.
The fence, though, is the enclosure of where the cars are parked. Is that correct?
Yeah, the idea,
not as a boundary fence to the property line, right?
Yeah, so the idea is the cars, by and large, closest to the homes will be parked, and that's one of the conditions we have in those spaces. So the fence will be above them, so those folks aren't going to be looking at those cars at all. We want the cars right against the fence.
Right. But there is, and I mean, maybe that's something we're getting to in another condition, but there is going to be excavation to mound that western property line. I'll be honest, I mean, that's my biggest concern. I know there's traffic concerns and other things like that, but I was up there, walked this property, looked at it, and I mean, those houses are right there.
You understand?
And, you know what I mean? They've got beautiful backyards that they want to be in, and, I wouldn't want to look at that either. So I think, the more land that can be pushed up or taken when they're building foundation and put up there, and then the trees going across there just minimizes, so the fence will help with not seeing the cars. But that would help with not really seeing, much of what's going on.
Yeah,
There's kind of be a sound barrier as well as visual barrier. And, you know, I don't know, it says the west side of the property. The houses, and I believe it's Willow Drive, some of those houses are sort of on the back west, I guess it'd be southwest portion of the property. You know, will that mound, if they're going to push that mound or build that up and put trees there, you know, I think it should go maybe wrap around a little bit so that it, you know, is going to minimize anyone in the neighborhood view.
So all I would say is we're not here tonight. If staff has some suggestion to wrap that a little bit, we were focused on those 3 homes.
Right.
Wrapping that fence a little bit, moving some trees. Now, the mounding implicates, we can't commit to that if there's stormwater issues or whatever. We essentially pulled the building and the parking as far away as we could, put the cars up against the fence, the mounding, the trees, and then we're going to talk with those neighbors too. Some of the biggest controls are on their own properties. So, and that's, you know, I have to deal with this. I've got a lot of trees up myself, so we want to, you know, do what we can to talk with those folks, but that's not part of this approval.
Okay. Now, just in terms of the 8-foot tall fence, is there any issues with westerly side 8-foot tall fence condition? That was just number 2?
No, that was worked through, not required by ordinance, but.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to point out, a lot of these conditions were already negotiated, as noted, more so than other towns. My clients are used to being extracted things, and in a good way, because you want it to be as good as you can. Your ordinance can't cover everything.
Yeah.
So a lot of these were before, when it got to you, a lot of work was done.
Absolutely. I think a part of it is just making sure that everybody knows how above and beyond we're trying to go, because I think some people think we're actually taking a little off the top for Caliber. In reality, it's the opposite. Caliber has agreed to these conditions above and beyond, and as you said, just because we want to make this as So moving on.
We're on board.
Yep. Moving on. Number 3, additional landscape screening will be installed and maintained on the west side of the property. More landscaping, the better. We've heard that all night. Council, thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously.
There should be additional landscaping, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's massive. I think there are 40 thujas, green giants, who they of course everything has to grow, but they'll, in good conditions, grow to 30+ feet tall, and they'll mesh. So some of that is going to take a little bit of time because you don't put 30. They're not available. We're going to buy the biggest commercially available thujas, and I've been around this a lot. In my personal, they talk about things being deer resistant. They're about as good as you get, in terms of working. So that's really been blasted about as much as you can, that with a slope. So that's been addressed.
Okay, awesome. Moving on, I'm sure this is an important one. Exterior building lighting during business hours will be on a timer and will turn on at dusk. Post business hours, the lighting will be on motion sensors. Council?
Post business hours.
Okay. This one is in the same vein. I'm just going to say it since they both deal with lighting, and this one's probably even more important. Exterior building lighting will be shielded to deflect light away from adjacent properties. We need that. We heard people say about where it's pointing. Bill, stop me if at any point you want to say anything. Okay.
No, these are all.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we all vetted them at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that were added, as you probably saw.
On that, Dana, as I understand it, and we talked about this lighting, not but on School Road South, when we were talking about that, there was a discussion about you can have directed lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And is that what's going to be here? I know you were saying shielding, but you can really specify where the lights go. Can that be done? Are we doing that?
Is there something we can do to further lessen the light impact? I don't know.
I believe the applicant had said at a previous meeting that they'll be mounted above the doors and
facing down, right?
Facing down.
Oh, okay.
With a shield on them.
Yeah. Perfect. So, very good.
Again, any of that needs to be specified, I think, assuming a lot of this is in the plan, if it's not, let's specify it.
Absolutely.
Okay, just, I know, clarification from my point. The lighting then that we're talking about is actually going to be emanating from a light on the structure? Or
Yes,
not on light
There's not
poles?
post lights,
Not
I
on
think.
There are
post
no
lights.
pole lights, yeah.
No pole lights.
Nope, no pole lights.
I do want to be clear, there is a pole light in the parking lot area. Again, it can be on a timer. It will be shielded, so it'll face inward toward the property. It won't, the lighting levels as per our photometric are 0-foot candles, so everything is directed in towards the site.
Perfect.
And those would just be on motion, not on all the time?
Those can be on motion as well.
Perfect. Number 6 is grading for stormwater management will be relocated away from the westerly property line. Again, trying to protect those residents. Council, I mean, that's, obviously we want that. Bill will stop us if we say anything that he doesn't like or the applicant has issues with. Number 7, signage will be consistent with Article 8, Section 220-88.1 of the Murraysville Municipal Zoning Code, and no additional signage will be requested. Additionally, there shall be no illuminated wall signs on the west building facade. You can see the theme of us trying to protect the westerly side. And we also have a very good sign ordinance, I think, so that in and of itself is good for us. And again, to everyone saying, in places other than Murraysville, these vehicles are not stored properly. We're not the council for anywhere but Murraysville. So condition number 8 is that vehicles will be stored in a neat and orderly fashion with adequate separation distances and drive aisles. Again, no problems from the applicant, so that is a condition that will be running with the development. They are agreeing that they are binding themselves to keep those in a neat and orderly fashion. So, council?
As part of that, Mr. and Mrs. Sepko sent some conditions. One of them was if the vehicle is showing any signs of leakage, that a pan or a collection would be placed under the vehicle while it's parked. Is that?
Could you come and speak into the mic, ma'am? Sorry, just people at home, I'm sure, care.
Yeah, you can add that condition.
Oh, there we go. Easy enough. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that brings us to, again, dealing with the vehicles. All vehicles will be stored only in designated parking stalls and will not block access to other stored vehicles or structures. Council, just trying to keep the vehicles orderly as possible. This is one where actually there may need to be some discussion. Hours of operation will be limited to 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. Council?
Okay.
I know some residents had...
I thought we were talking 5 o'clock.
Well, some residents brought that up, but the applicant hasn't said anything about that. So applicant...
So I can speak to going back to the company and having it vetted all the way through. These are these hours. They, first of all, unlikely to be Saturday hours and unlikely to be as late as 7. But this runs forever. So to the extent that somebody slides over a little bit or needs to come in on a Saturday, these are maximum, but we expect them to be less than that. So what happened is, when I first sent them out, we had the morning hours, and then we had some afternoon hours, and it's like, look, we can't get we don't want to say we're going to be on the early side. To the extent that you need flexibility, do not do it on the early side. So what we did, we held the early hours, and we held not going earlier on Saturday in particular, and so instead of splitting that, these are the hours that we're given. We moved them all toward the back end. So the idea was to keep it as quiet as we can in the mornings, keep it as limited as we can totally, but to the extent that there's any overage, it would be evening. And, Saturday, midday.
Now, this is an important condition because, Jim, I believe this is one that if the applicant doesn't agree to this as a permitted use, can we impose hours of operation on them?
The ordinance specifies hours of operation, but I can't recall specifically right now what they are. But those hours proposed there look to be in conformance with what the ordinance says.
Oh, so we'll make sure they're at the very least meeting the ordinance or exceeding. Thank you. Council, thoughts? Okay, we will move on. The building will be equipped with garage-style doors to allow cars to enter and exit the facility for repairs. The building will be served by central heating and air conditioning to facilitate closure of the garage doors in all weather conditions. Employees will also be directed to minimize the length of time that the garage doors on the west side of the building remain open during normal operational hours. Great condition, council?
Yeah, I mean, I think this one's important for keep maintaining that the sound going on and the repairs are minimized to that west property. So pretty much, unless they're pulling a car in or out, they're going to be closed all the time.
Yep.
It doesn't say that.
Yeah, it's like, we can't say it, because the enforceability, or you actually pulling the car out. This is one where I weighed in, because the company was willing to, we're going to do this, like, look, this opens a can of worms. The best thing we can do is have a facility that is weatherized, and then encourage it, because, if people are taking pictures or saying you didn't need it there. Some of that's, the code enforcement hey, we're going to get noise complaints, keep your doors closed. It's kind of a neighborhood thing. But I couldn't think of any better legal thing where I didn't set up an innocent violation. Or the reality is, and we were up at Conley's, whenever there's a breeze day where it's like 70 degrees, that seems to be the time where it's, you get some air, or it's nice and sunny, and maybe that happens. And so you may have to knock on the door and say, hey, close the door. But, your employees, that's the kind of time when it's hot and cold, it's weatherized. So that's the reality of kind of operations. So that's functionally what we're dealing with, and don't want to set up technical violations. The biggest thing there's a sensitivity again to the west side, but in dealing with Conley's, theirs is not air conditioned, and they still don't have the doors open very often. It seems to be really in hot weather is the time. So it's a major, we think, a commitment to have the whole facility air conditioned.
Is that a normal, are these facilities not normally air conditioned, the other Caliber facilities?
No, Caliber is, well, and I'm not saying the existing ones, this is a Caliber condition, but again.
But if you were putting this elsewhere, where they didn't care about the doors being open, would it be?
Do you do that in other climates in Pittsburgh? It's a regional, but if we're doing it in Pittsburgh, the answer is yes. But as we've talked about, Caliber can leave. Or not build this, and somebody else could come in and build it. So this is requiring it. And honestly, what we tried to do is to say, we said Conley's is the gold standard. We say, no, Caliber's the gold standard, and here we're going to establish it. We're going to commit to it. All the things that they did, admittedly, some of them Caliber do because it's a national organization. We just committed to them. Some of them things that we talked about are site-specific. But those things like air conditioning, those are things that somebody at Caliber's level does. But Caliber doesn't build it. Caliber leaves 10 years from now. The air conditioning goes out. Somebody doesn't want to replace it. Then, you get to enforce it.
I guess I have a question around the doors. Are they facing west, or could they face east?
Well, there's on both sides.
On both sides, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to number 12. Materials for reconstruction of vehicles will be stored within the confines of the building. Additionally, storage of damaged vehicle components will be properly stored completely within the confines of the privacy fence and removed by a contracted scrap hauler on a scheduled basis. Again, trying to keep this as orderly as possible for anyone who would look at it.
This is not a regular condition.
Absolutely.
And it's not something done at Conley's. So that's something we did on the site visit and saw we could commit to improving.
Wow, thank you for that. Council? Okay, moving on, trash will be stored within bins that will be confined within the walls of a trash enclosure that will be constructed within the area of the vehicle storage area. Trash will be removed on a regular basis by a local service provider. Okay. Best management practice shall be implemented to ensure protection of the air, water, and soil of Westmoreland County from pollution and degradation of quality. Obviously, that's very necessary, and I believe there was also statements made that this is a heavily regulated industry, so it's good to hear there will be enforcement on many levels. So, council, thoughts? Okay. As it pertains to maintenance of substances, fluids, and airborne particles, all applicable federal, state, and local licenses and/or permits for the specific use will be obtained and kept current. Again, that's good in that if for some reason they should run afoul of the DEP or anyone else, that gives us the right as municipality to also enforce things. Applicant is required to show evidence of all federal, state, and local permits. Yeah.
Back to the 15 on the fluids, and I think it was brought up before with the storage of the vehicles. Are we stipulating as a condition that every vehicle has, I don't know what they call them, kind of like a
drip pans?
a drip pan diaper, car diaper?
No, I believe.
So will every car have one of those under? Because that's a tough thing, if someone, well, it's not leaking that bad. Wouldn't it be easier to standardize that every car comes in and something goes under it to make sure nothing runs into?
No, that it was. I think the testimony you had is the exception. It's a rare situation where there are fluids still leaking when the car comes on site.
And I believe. Oh, go on, sir.
Yeah. So, to the extent that it is that rare car, we'll pick it off and put the cover. But I think we heard the gentleman testify that he's seen other of these and there were no pads under them. That's why, because there was also no fluid dripping. I think it's pretty safe to say if you look at it, and I've looked at a lot of them on site, look at the Caliber locations. They don't look like the normal driveway with oil on them. They pretty much, if you look at existing Caliber sites, they would show if there's leaks. So, but the answer is, it's overkill. There aren't generally fluids coming out of the vehicles that are brought onto site.
Good thought. I will say, though, earlier we said that if it is leaking, we can put a condition that there will be a drip pan. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those that are appropriate for, and they will be.
Perfect. So again, 16, somewhat in the same vein that they have to show evidence. They actually have to affirmatively show us evidence of all federal, state, and local permits. Very good, running with the land. Number 17, applicant is required to further investigate and address the potential conditions in the southeast corner of the site, including any supports or mitigation measures that may be required. A slope stability assessment through this embankment area, including the use of appropriate strength parameters, must be included. Council, thoughts? Again,
just a clarification on that. We have done additional engineering, and to the extent that we can make this more specific to reference that particular document, that's what we're going to do. We may make this more specific than general.
Okay, perfect.
We're obviously going to.
Property behind. Geotechnical engineering group that did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the southeast portion, so that's like the back of the property where it would run down to her property. Yeah.
Mrs. Mills is
It's closer to her.
property.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is one that came up that I think will lead to a question for maybe Wes and Jim, but number 18, applicant is required to show evidence of availability letters for all utilities. So that's pretty standard. The one statement that was said that I think we need to clear up is somebody said, Murraysville Council, they need an easement from you. And if you deny that easement, that's it. They can't build. My understanding is that's not true, that they'll find a way to get sewage. It's just that easement is the best way. So can anybody help me to understand this? Is it really as simple as if we deny that easement, there is no way for this property to get sewage ever? Is that true?
You want to handle that, Wes?
Yeah, it's my understanding that public sewage availability is along Route 22 up to Berkshire Drive, and then up a distance of Berkshire Drive about 200 feet. And that does not require an easement. That would go up the PennDOT right-of-way. They would have to bore under Berkshire Drive. The site would have to have a grinder pump installed to push the sewage, because it's not a gravity flow that way. Further investigation, I think, was done by the planning department and verified that an on-site sewage disposal system is not available. So that possibility is not present. The third possibility would be by gravity flow through the area of Mannerdale Farms Plan Number 1, which would require an easement, and in my opinion requires court approval for the granting of that easement. But one way or the other, I think Mr. Dice and council members and Mayor Simon, to answer your question, public sewage is available. It's just whether it's going to go gravity through the parkland, which is the 17 acres to the south, or whether it's going to go up along Route 22 and access the public sewage system that's present along Berkshire Drive.
Okay, thanks, Wes. That was my understanding. I think that's very important for everyone to know. So thank you, and thanks, Jim.
I might want to say, too, that these plans not only don't have to identify that final condition. There was testimony about HOPs. This is one of those. It would be wrong to deny it because we're not showing you where the storage is, this sewage is now. It has to be available. How we get there can only be, obviously, it's a condition of getting any permits, but it's not a basis for denial.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It's just, that was said, and I wanted to make sure we were cleared up on what we could do, what we couldn't do.
If I may, that includes all utilities, gas, electric,
absolutely,
water, sewage.
And that gets back to what I said earlier. You know, there was discussion of permits. If for whatever reason the conservation district says NO, it's out of our hands and it's out of the applicant's hands. So, yeah, absolutely.
I'm hoping we have some more detail to make sure that we're highly regulated, so we're going to submit, this is what we do, these are the standards, just to, and we may, we'll get with staff, get with Jim to maybe specify that a little more closely.
Yeah, definitely. This is more of the generalities, so you can work with.
Yeah, these last one, Mr. President, these last ones were just given to us this morning, so some of this is going to take some time to
and I understand
flesh out. They're all acceptable. We're just probably going to try to refine them.
Well, I'm glad you just said that, so thank you to say they're even acceptable from the outlay. So proceeding with number 20, this might be standard. Applicant is required to provide financial security in the amount of 110 of the municipally approved public improvement costs.
Might weigh in here just so we're not misrepresenting.
Okay.
Some of these are required by law. They will not drop out no matter what I do.
Yeah,
and this is one of them.
Yeah.
Not all 26 of these are not required by law.
I was going to say 110% is pretty standard.
That's the MPC. We don't have any wiggle room there. But so up until like now, most of those, most of these are, add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of this bonding things now are required no matter what happens.
I mean, a lot of these too, with the recordation at the courthouse, I know, it's just something to go over. The applicant shall be required to enter into a stormwater management and maintenance agreement with the municipality. The agreement is to be recorded at the Westmoreland County Courthouse. Just with the nature of stormwater today, very necessary. The applicant municipality, the agreement is to be recorded at the Westmoreland County Courthouse. Again, that's standard, we do that. A fire hydrant is to be installed at or near the entrance on Route 22. That's a very good one. 26, if hazard materials are encountered because of excavation at the site, the developer shall notify the Department of Environmental Resources and follow all necessary protocols outlined by DEP to properly remove any hazardous waste above or below ground within the depth of disturbance prior to any construction. So I'm guessing this is in regards to a supposed buried house that might be there. That's, you know, if the applicant wants to build and you find a house, then something you got to remedy.
Hopefully no surprises.
Yeah, always. So those were the 26 conditions. Again, I say we, it's really staff who tried to put these conditions on and let the applicant know this is what the residents wanted. And as I look through these, it looks like they did hear the residents because a lot of that was incorporated in there.
And your planning commission.
Yep, absolutely.
You have a very
thorough,
rigorous planning commission process.
So this isn't a condition per se, but I was contacted by one of the residents within Mannerdale, and one of the concerns too is I believe in recent years the built signs for Mannerdale Farms are kind of right where the utilities possibly are coming up, and they just want to ensure that, you know, those will, if removed, will be replaced. You know, I think the residents are footed the cost for those, and it's like a brick structure or some type of structure like that. So we just want to ensure, and I mean, I know that's probably part of that 110% that they're going to guarantee, but I just wanted to bring it up. I told them I would bring that up. So
I mean, it would seem to me if somehow that was
if it has
destroyed
to
or
be,
harmed,
yeah,
then-
if it has to be removed, and you know they have to match. I think there's two on both sides of the entrance. I'm not positive to that, but you know, just that it would be replaced with like or similar or whatever.
Yeah, if it would be
back how it
harmed or
was.
anything destroyed,
Right.
yeah. So that's, to me, just standard. If you break it, you bought it.
Yeah.
Hey, Dane, I have one other comment, and I don't recall if it's part of the application, and maybe, Jim, you can answer this, or it needs to be considered a condition. I think we've had this topic before, is the Caliber will only do collision repair body work and not mechanical work. Is that what I understood, and is that part of the application, or does it need to be a condition, or can we add it as a condition?
So we thought long and hard about this one because we tell you what, couple things, that changes. You know, electric cars, you're moving batteries or not, what's mechanical, you're moving things, like we heard we can take an engine out just to do body work. That type of facility is permitted anyway in here, totally mechanical. So again, not to get into the technical, because there will be things that they're doing that are mechanical that facilitate the body work. And again, we don't want to get into, you know, a gray area as, oh, well, that's mechanical. But on the, we can say is the purely mechanical will be sent to, you know, it'll be an arrangement with a local provider. But this won't be if you come in for your car and you need your motor rebuilt, this is not where it will be done. We'll commit to that. This is not where there will be, you know, the mechanical, it's not a mechanical shop, it's a body shop. So any mechanical work will be related to the body work. We can say that.
I think I had brought up that question at the last meeting as well, if the business model would change, I think. So I think the answer then is yes, it could change.
We've come to the conclusion of the 26, but going back to, I just want to make sure, I think, Jim, did you say that conditions of 201 and 220 will be met then? All the conditions in the code book?
I would identify them as conditions, Mr. Stepanovich. I would identify them as requirements for submittal of application.
Okay. So all of 201 and all of 220 will be met?
They have been met to get to this point, unless conditioned in those 26 conditions.
Okay. And 93 as well, was that what you said?
93 has certain requirements in it, but they are not specifically requirements of the application.
Mr. Sepko had sent a document with conditions that the residents at Mannerdale, I feel obligated to read it since I'm not sure if you received it. Okay, do you mind?
I was dealing with an attorney and we exchanged. informed me this afternoon he's no longer involved, so stop there.
Okay, do you mind if I read?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
I'll read it in entirety. Sorry if you get tired of my voice. Comments, conditions for Caliber Collision. Note that the listing of conditions to address concerns below does not represent acquiescence of the residents to the proposed facility. The vast majority of the residents still strongly oppose the approval of this facility. However, if council is legally obligated to approve this facility, then the following concerns should be addressed as listed below. There are 6. Number 1. One of our main concerns is the impact on traffic. The proposed entrance is too close, given that the traffic routinely exceeds the speed limits to the existing Mannerdale entrance exit. It is not clear to us why the proposed entrance cannot be moved further east. We understand that there is an existing dirt road cut through the hillside where the proposed entrance is currently planned, but moving it further east seems possible with a little more earthwork. Did you want me to continue, or?
You tell me. I'm happy to respond now.
I think it might be easier if we just take it one by one. Okay.
So, and I haven't been privy to it, but I'm just summarizing. There's been a meeting with PennDOT and taking into account the best locations of the driveway and where they're going to permit the driveway. And these have been identified as the PennDOT approvable driveways. So while there may be that perception, this was already vetted with PennDOT before we came here, which isn't always the case. It's a wise thing to do in District 12 because just like Murraysville, District 12 is the most rigorous district in the Commonwealth. You folks may not know that because there's a perception that you have a lot of traffic problems, but your district is the toughest in the Commonwealth. So that's already been vetted, and we don't want to commit to something. We're going to get the HOP for where the driveways are.
Okay, so I'll move on to number 2. Another concern is the quality of the stormwater discharge to the existing stream. We acknowledge they are proposing a control pond, but it is not clear to us, based on the poor quality of the plans provided to us, if this is a detention, a dry basin, or a retention, a wet basin. If it is a detention dry basin, the ability to treat runoff chemicals leaking from vehicles is minimal. If this is a retention basin, then it should be completely fenced to prevent accidental drownings as kids routinely play in the green space. In either case, the applicant should be required to inspect all vehicles when they arrive at the lot and to place collection pans under all vehicles that have any leakage of car fluids. These collection pans should be inspected periodically to ensure they are not overtopping during wet weather or emptied for proper disposal of collected fluids. That's the end of number 2.
Well, just generically, the whole fence over the detention pond, retention, and it's going to be a dry basin. That's, if that were something the municipality decided was a safety issue and they wanted, we don't think that makes any sense. And we don't think you'll see them in any municipal basins. One of the things that Jim noted was we talked about the new stormwater conditions with bonding and recorded agreement. What happened historically is they weren't maintained. There's no problem if they're running correctly. This is a maintenance issue. It's, first of all, they're not designed for any chemicals. We don't want any chemicals in there, so we have to stop them. We've already talked about that's highly regulated, and we're following those regulations, not the perception of what are better ways to regulate them. So it's really about maintenance of the basin. I think everybody agrees it's safe and it'll operate. And there are now conditions in place where you have recorded agreements and mandatory requirements. That's one of the conditions we talked about. This is actually a requirement now on stormwater. We have to do it. So that's the protection, the level of protection on stormwater. And frankly, this is not a high volume discharge. Just isn't. This is not, you're not going to have ponding of water. Have to be a massive maintenance failure. And again, if there requirements are that I think they're semi-annual gym inspections. So there's a mechanism in place to have that this doesn't become a pool.
Okay. And I know we had addressed the pans underneath the car already. I think that was part of this where they had asked, of course, all the vehicles that are leaking car fluids will have pans underneath them. Right, okay.
I don't know if we call them pans.
Diaper, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hate saying diaper. I've diapered too many kids.
Pigs.
It's a gross
Oh,
yeah.
analogy. Okay. Number 3, another concern is the sight, sounds, and fire risk from the facility. Damaged vehicles are unsightly and noise from the operations can be a nuisance. Additionally, with more electric vehicles, EV, being sold, the risk of fires from such damaged vehicles cannot be ignored. We are concerned that an EV fire occurring outside against the proposed fence line could ignite nearby vegetation and cause a wildfire that spreads throughout the green space and potentially to our neighborhood. To alleviate these concerns, we would like to see a more substantial wall-like structure surrounding the lot that would be fireproof and sound deadening. This wall would replace the proposed fence around the lot. That's the end of number 3.
Yeah, so we've, as indicated, gone above and beyond. The one thing we're very confident about, which is something that the neighbors have demonstrated here, is it's loud from the highway. And you're just not going to hear this facility. We're really comfortable. To the extent you ever have any quiet hours or low traffic hours, it's going to be dark and empty. So we're really considering those in meaningful ways. To start a wall with acoustical studies, I mean, we see them in the gas wells or something. You get into a whole level of ugly whenever you're not mitigating any sound. We already have an 8-foot high fence, and there's a balance there of like, that sounds good until you're looking at a fence, you know. So for reasons that are really practical, but also ultimately you're going to not add any benefit, spend money in something that's a lot uglier. We think that's all been really effectively mitigated. We would like to say there's no like garage doors on the west, but it won't function. So, you know, we've looked at every way to design it, to move it. And this is, yeah, we've been very sensitive to that. And
before we leave this, as far as I know, it's been mentioned about electric vehicles. If they were to catch fire, it could be a traumatic thing in wildfires and so forth. Is there any practical way of saying, well, EV vehicles will be parked next to the structure and not next to the fence? Is that anything that makes sense?
one, I'd say I'd like to join anybody that wants to go move to outlaw electric vehicles. I'm on board. So, but the reality is, you know, you have them, and it's going to evolve. We're going to comply with all the regulations that evolve from them. But I'd submit to you and look at your fire official, and if there are any, you know, recommendations from a fire official, you know, I don't think there's anything that they would say we need to do. But again, if you have a fire chief or whatever, I'd say the most dangerous place for these neighbors to have an electric vehicle is in their garages. Fire in Peters Township, not reported as an electric car fire, burned 3 houses recently, and it's because the electric car is in the garage. So this is way off-site. There's nothing flammable, and so there doesn't present any fire hazard to any of the homes.
Just an aside question, just curiosity on my part. I know it takes, you can't put water, obviously, on an electrical vehicle fire. You have to throw, I don't know what it is that they throw on there to stop it. Is that anything that would be kept on site, like to stop it before it grew? If something were to happen while they were working on a vehicle in there, just even for the safety for their own employees?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's a good question. We'll report back. I assume because they have, even setting aside electric vehicles, they have different types of fires, and I assume they have different types of extinguishers and things. There's not a sprinkler system here. So we'll report back exactly what they have on site to extinguish it.
I would also note that any commented on by those departments.
I was just curious
Yeah.
for my own.
That's a good question. We'll find out, because it's an absolutely different type of fire.
Do you know a little bit about the only real way is to starve it, basically vacate the oxygen from it. But that requires sealing, so I'm not sure how that's feasible.
Okay. Three more points from Mr. Sepko. Number 4, the proposed exterior lighting on the parking lot should be on a timer such that the lights go out after 10 p.m.
Hopefully, they'll be out a lot sooner than that. In fact, they're going to be out no later than 7 p.m.
Okay, they're just on a motion sensor for somebody in the parking
Timer.
lot for theft or something like that. Okay. Number 5, we are concerned about increased truck traffic through our neighborhood. All deliveries to the facility, truck traffic should be required to use only a traffic pattern that avoids use of any of our neighborhood residential roads.
So I've heard that. I understand it, where people pass the driveway and do a turnaround. You know, I do a lot of this in urban settings. That's where most of my work is. The best thing to do is directional signage and to locate it so that they see it in advance. We're going to try to do it, again, within the ordinance. But I don't know that there's any way that we can control people. We don't think they're going to. By and large, the trucks that are coming know where it is and how to get there. You're not saying it couldn't happen. Probably more from a customer that's coming to visit that's not as familiar. So I don't really have an answer. You know, we can't keep them off the public roads, but we're open to any directional signage situation. We want them to come, obviously, into the driveway as best we can. So the extent that there's any, directional signage suggested to improve that. But, we think the driveways are appropriately, notwithstanding that comment, are appropriately sited and there's good sight distance. Admittedly, the speed of the road's high. That's an issue.
The last point, number 6. As we see that Caliber has been sued for various violations over the years, we are concerned about compliance at this facility. Accordingly, we want a contact that we can call to lodge complaints that will be at a senior corporate level that has the power to correct any deficiencies noted by the residents in a timely manner. This contact should commit to responding to complaints within 2 days.
We'll provide a suggestion for that. We'll try to get our best response, best condition we can put in there.
Thank you.
We heard that one. That's frankly, one that dropped off for me.
Thanks, Jamie. As I review some of the other feedback, Mr. Siddick, that the residents have provided, one of them was the water line needs to run down, I guess that would be the PennDOT easement alongside of the resident's house. Likely there'd be some trees taken down. Would you be open to planting new trees after that utility work has taken place?
Yeah, that's part of, one of the reasons we think the sewer line, the water line has to run up there, but it's likely now that the sewer line will also. So we want to minimize the disturbances along 22 and up Berkshire. So, but the water line, we're going to get a contractor out there and talk with our neighbors about their backyards and their landscaping. And that's really something I think the contractor will on site make calls and decide depending on where the final locations are. Not something we can do now, but we are committing that our contractor will work with the neighbors to, replace vegetation, landscaping, and to the extent that we can, look at the grading to the rear of those 3 properties to the west.
Jim, what's the protection for residents like the Smiths obviously had stated in the past the concern with the erosion of that property line up against 22? Who monitors that, or who mediates that? Are we as a municipality involved to make sure that, if a neighbor's property, and it doesn't have to be a commercial business, if something in your neighbor's is damaging your property, what are the
Well, anything within the PennDOT right-of-way would be PennDOT responsibility. I would caution, though, what we find in many instances, what residents perceive to be their property is not necessarily the case. and it's usually part of right-of-way, either municipal or other government agency right-of-way. So whoever owns the right-of-way, it's their responsibility.
So if that's a municipal right-of-way, we would make sure it's...
If a property is producing runoff, or if there's slippage from that property onto a neighbor's property, it is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain and correct. The municipality usually doesn't get involved with that because it becomes a private matter, a civil matter.
But if we're the owner of that...
Then we would have the responsibility.
Okay.
Council, there's been a lot of discussions on conditions. Further thoughts here? Closing thoughts from anyone?
Just what's the, curious, this is new to me on council, but what happens next with these conditions? You guys, staff goes back and forth with the final document?
That would be my thought as well. Bill, you said there are a few things you think you need fleshed out or further clarified, so I would think, this is our chance as a council to give further input. I think we've given a lot of input, and to answer your question, Jason, I think as you said, you intuited that now it's simply Mr. Sittig and Jim and Mike Nestico sitting down and fleshing out these conditions and really getting them into a written form. That way at the next council meeting, there will be a vote, and I'm hoping Mr. Sittig will say on behalf of the applicant, we accept all conditions. And at that point, all those conditions, regardless of the applicant had to accept them, the case law is clear. Once you accept them as a condition of approval, that's it. They're conditions, and there's no wiggling out of them. So that would, to me, be the next step of staff and the applicant will work together to put together final conditions that will be approved or denied, potentially. But again, that would be the next step. And again, I think what we need to remember, because the applicant has, put some skin in the game to say, we are agreeing to these conditions if this is approved, but if this is denied, then the applicant is saying all these conditions go away. And they will still get to build it, because unless there is an absolutely explicit and good reason for denial, denying it means all the conditions go away. And to this point, I don't know if we have a reason for denial, but I'll defer to staff on that.
The conditions, as the President stated, will be fleshed out. They will be provided to you before the next meeting. As we do with other development applications, approve or deny the application in the case of approval, subject to the conditions listed, and they will be incorporated as part of the developer's agreement, which gets recorded.
At the courthouse, yep.
Which is a Murraysville requirement. That's not a state requirement. It's why I have to say on the developer, I can't stand that one.
Yeah.
Because it's never extinguished. You never know if it's what happens to it, but they insist on it, and we're going to do it.
Those conditions, too, those go forward with if Caliber sold the building to somebody else, the conditions. Wes, thoughts? How does that work?
The conditions run with the land.
Run with the land.
So if Caliber sold the business or the property, those conditions remain.
And I will remind council that there is a landscaping bond posted. So, 2 years from now, if the trees die, they have to come back and replace them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, for all of these improvements, there's been a bond of 110% that will have to be posted. So all of these improvements will be going in. Yep.
So that's one of the things. It's not insignificant. There's a separate maintenance obligation here. One of the bugaboos is when the bond runs out. Mm-hmm. I know, where I live and my clients, 10 years later, they're not there. There's no bond. This says these have to be maintained indefinitely, unless there's an approval of a change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if those die, they have to get replaced.
Yep. And as you said, that approval to change would come from this council or later versions of it. So.
Right. And this is binding. Again, you have a dry period or, all of a sudden they're they're dead, they're brown, the neighbors then just have to look at that after the bond's done, or, you get some blight. They have to address it and replace them indefinitely. It's actually something the municipality can't otherwise impose. It's illegal to have a permanent bond.
But again, the applicant has agreed to do that, which I think is very significant, so.
Maybe more than my client realizes, but they plan on doing it. That's something personally that bothers me. If it looks great the first couple years or first 5 years, and then all of a sudden, it looks bad. So
We've certainly had to deal with that here from
Yeah.
people. So again, we're nearing the end of this discussion on this Caliber collision development. If we were the lords of Murraysville, this wouldn't be going in, but we're not. So my position as one vote is we're doing the best we can. Any final thoughts from anybody?
Did we talk about the setback? I don't know what somebody said it was supposed to be
Yeah,
40 feet.
the
but
20
it's-
verse 40, I mean, we're,
What is that, Jim?
yeah, we're not
Is that-
giving any breaks on setback, so I'm just curious, maybe we can have that answered at some point. Do you know, ma'am? Can you say it up there?
I'll look back.
Okay.
Make sure.
I just wanted to confirm, I double-checked with the civil engineer. We're meeting a 50-foot parking setback and a 40-foot side yard setback on the residential side. So I don't know if it was an older version of the plan. We're not asking for any variances, otherwise we'd be before you,
The
as
zoning
Will said, for a
hearing board,
different
yep.
reason.
Okay, all right. Just wanted clarification. Thank you.
No, very important, thank you. Okay. Hearing no, Carl, any thoughts? Okay, with that being said, we will move on to our last remaining item. I will note this is a voting item under council action items number 14A. So can I have a motion for 14A, please?
I'll make a motion to approve SP 6-23 Whispering Woods subdivision, major land development application, 3304 Logan Ferry Road, a 6-lot subdivision, 19.3 acres, tax parcel 49-10-13-0-014, R2 zoning.
Subject to modifications.
Second the motion.
Okay, we got Mac and Carl, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Jim?
Subject to the modifications and the conditions outlined in the briefing.
Yep, so we'll note that the motion is inclusive of all conditions contained in the staff briefing. Do we need any explanation from the applicant or anything, or is this a?
He's here to show you what he's planning to do if you're interested.
Let's do it. Clear?
Good evening. My name is Brian Almeter with the firm of Farringer McCarty Gray. We're the engineers for this particular plan. I'll try to keep it brief. I think you've seen the plan before. This was a property that was before you about a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago for rezoning. So the plan hasn't changed that much since that time. I did bring a hard copy out. I'm pretty sure you can put your camera on that, or Mr. Morrison has a PDF copy. Just real quick, the property, as mentioned, is on Logan's Ferry Road at 3304, tax parcel number 4910-13-0-014. It contains 19.3 acres. This was part of the remainder of the Clifton Vista plan that was recorded back in 2010. And the gist of what the applicant is proposing to do here is to essentially use the existing driveway that serviced the existing home and accessory buildings. There are some barns and storage sheds and those types of things. Improve that to access 5 single-family lots with the remainder, which is outlined in green on the exhibit, for their personal leisure and use. In essence, 5 lots exceeding 20,000 square foot per lot. As Mr. Morrison mentioned and is in the briefing, there are a number of waivers and modifications that we worked through Planning Commission and worked with your fire chief to make sure we have the quality that's needed to access the 5 homes and provide the adequate protection. Other than that, again, all the permitting has been
submitted for review and approval. This is in a high-quality watershed, so it goes to DEP. It's in there for their review for both stormwater and soil erosion control. So we've met with the water company, FTMSA, all those entities. So I think we're at the finish line of council desires.
Okay. Is this the property that the green space was given on the back end? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Conservation easement,
conservation.
basically the green areas or a good portion of the green area is part of the conservation easement.
Right. That's right.
To preserve the hillside and the vegetation that's there.
So was the original one house that I thought was going to be built on there constructed yet?
No, it has not, because we needed to subdivide the property in order to create the lots on which to sell or which to build.
So my question is, I believe there was talk about the drainage, right?
Yes.
If I recall from that meeting. Can you describe the drainage? Because I know that we have a regular resident that comes in, Mr. Wolf, who has complaints about sewage and runoff also, I believe. Could you describe anything that you're doing to mitigate runoff?
Are we there yet?
I thought they.
It's part of the land development application and
when
plan.
they were previously in here, so I would just like a recap of that.
Let's do it, please.
Yeah, so as required, we do soil testing to see if there's any infiltration. There was not any infiltration at the 5 or 6 sites that were at and around the existing home or proposed home sites. We had originally thought we were going to do individuals at each lot. But because those were not found, the intention is to build, if I may, two facilities adjacent to Logan Ferry Road that are underground facilities, basically what they call storm bricks or square containment areas. They're lined so because the soils are not infiltrating, we don't want to encourage water to go through the site onto Logan Ferry Road. So they're underground storage, lined. They meet the volume and quality runoff standards of the municipality. Those get connected and into an inlet on Logan Ferry Road and then discharged into the stream below. Apologize, there's a bridge there. I'm not sure exactly what direction that is, but below the bridge on Logan Ferry Road.
Do those catch the water and then slowly release it?
Yes, and the intent is that those would be built initially so that the 5 homes can be built. They're not one for one house or 2 for 2 houses. They're built to control the runoff from the 5 homes and grading and driveways associated with those homes.
Are those put in prior to the building of any of the homes then? So
that would be the initial phase would be to install those so that when the building permit comes in for, let's say, lot 2, it's already there and it's just a matter of connecting their roof drains and any other drainage into the system.
So is there any, could you say like what the flow of that would be? The reason I'm saying is if you have a lot of rain, occasionally that creek rises. So if you're directing additional flow into the creek, is there a possibility that that would cause it to contribute to an overflow?
No, part of the analysis is to take certain points of interest. In this case, I think there were 2 or 3 points of interest where we have post-grading, the post-homes, the post-driveways, does not increase the runoff and interest. I'll give you an example. There is a high point near the driveway. I actually went out there when it was raining so I could actually see the water coming down the driveway, and did it go left or right? In fact, it does go to the left, some of it. So my engineer was very diligent about, okay, where is that watershed line? Because we have to prove to both the municipality, the Westmoreland Conservation District, and now DEP, because of the watershed classification, that we're not increasing that in any one of those directions. That was one example. We obviously have some adjoining homes that sort of jut into and around this property. We did the same thing on those as well.
So is on here, is it the 15?
15 feet wide, yes.
Currently?
Yes. Not currently. Currently, it's just a gravel driveway. So it's basically a drive lane. What we're proposing to do is level that off, smooth the transition at Logan Ferry Road to accommodate a fire truck, and then pave it to be 15 feet wide.
Okay.
Right now, it's hard. It's basically hard gravel, and I think DEP and probably the municipal ordinances, you know, everybody says, well, it'd be nice to have it a stone driveway and let it perk back into the ground. DEP doesn't even allow that anymore because they know darn well that it's going to get compacted and the water's going to run off just very similar to pavement. So we have to accommodate that.
So when the paved driveway is put in, could that redirect the flow that you were looking at where it went, or will you manage it so that it's directed in the same manner?
Generally, it will flow in it and as it is today, except we will catch some of it before it goes there because we can't increase the flow there.
So generally, the municipality is broken up in distinct release districts. So any development, post-development, cannot increase the amount of stormwater going into the system that was going in prior to development. I'm not sure what the release rate here is, but there are some areas that it has to be reduced by 80% or 40% or 50%. Do you know what the release area is here?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
I would guess that it's probably at least 20% has to be taken out. So post-development, 20% less water is to get into the system than prior to development.
And even some caveats about what's there now may have to be considered a meadow grass, which will also lower the pre-development rate even further. So there's a lot of, nuances to the code and nuances to the design of the systems, but I think we've done as well as we can on this particular piece of property.
And that's part of the stormwater management plan and the post-stormwater management plan that's submitted as part of the application and reviewed and made recommendations on.
Okay, thank you.
Just one item here, and I believe it might be in the supporting documents, but it says here, what is the estimated cost of the project? Do you recall what that is?
We did submit a cost estimate for what we would consider common elements, the driveway, the grading, the storm system.
Yeah, I was thinking not the detail, but, the bottom line.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember what that cost was. We did submit it as part of the application in order to establish the bond amount. But off the top of my head, I do not know.
Under the construction of roads and streets and so forth, in our briefing here, it's 97-4, and it has to do with the applicant respectfully requests that the private driveway be considered under reduced design parameter.
Right.
And what is the significance of that? And if you could elaborate.
Sure. Currently, the municipal code, I believe, Mr. Morrison, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Mr. Long. Sorry. Through brain freezer for a minute, but the gist of what it is that the Murraysville Code up to 4 lots has reduced standards because this plan is proposing 5 single-family homes. We exceed that threshold, and the actual municipal code says you shall build that to a municipal standard, which would be 24-foot wide, 50-foot rights-of-way, and all the other, I'll say, baggage that goes along with a publicly traveled road. Our opinion was, and based on the discussion with your fire chief or dialogue with the fire chief, was it didn't need to be at that municipal standard for just that one lot over that threshold, and we designed it to accommodate the emergency medical vehicles that may be needed, hopefully not needed, but may be needed. Certain things like roadway, like I said, roadway width, profile, some of the turning movements, cul-de-sac. Some of those items we think that this plan benefits from by not going there because of the stormwater runoff, the thermal pollution, and some of those other negative things that come off of highways and pavement and that, and it's just not needed for 5 lots.
I know this is going to seem like a weird question. Is there going to be an HOA for this property? These properties?
Yes, there are, part of the review process was submitting
A fire truck can ram, but we would like to avoid
Yes.
collisions
Certainly
with our
understand that.
equipment. That if there could be something put in like an HOA so that it would facilitate, fire rescue or ambulance rescue.
Sure. I don't think it's in the documents that we've submitted, but we can certainly look at that again. I would guess that it would be that event, a party or something that would have extra visitors.
Right.
Here.
Could put it in the private road maintenance agreement?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that it wouldn't be, certainly overnight parking and those types of things would be sort of a no-brainer, but also knowing if there's a birthday party going on for a child or an anniversary party or something. Right now, we've shown enough driveway space, at least 2 extra cars could park in the driveway without impacting, if not more, depending on where the house is sited and the driveway is located.
Okay, I know, it's kind of crazy. I
certainly think about it, but again, those occasions, atypical occasions, come up.
Okay. Further questions or concerns from council? Okay. If there's no further concerns, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it is unanimous.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you. I see no old business. Any old business from anyone? New business? No executive session? No action items? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second the motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.